This is Liberty Under Attack Radio, hosted by Shane and Matt. Your place for documented truth and where freedom is the only agenda. We must end the terror war.
And good evening and welcome. Today is April 12th, 2015, and you're listening to Liberty Under Attack Radio on the Freedom Phalanx Radio Network. I am your host, Shane. My co-host, Matt, will not be joining us this evening, but we're definitely glad you're here. If you want to join in on the conversation, feel free to call in. That number is 218-895-3818 or on Skype at FPRN Radio Live. If I may make one request, I'm interested to see where you found the show from. For those that are here every week for every show, obviously this isn't for you, but for those that are, but if you found the show from any of my various social media pages, please let me know which one by indicating it in the chat, just for my own purposes. I would also like to direct you to the website, as I do every week, libertyunderattack.com. Go to the End the Terror War tab and catch the newest edition of Matt's series, The Terror Industrial Complex and You. You can find the entire list of 20 or so there. I'll also direct you to my most recent article discussing my adventure of canceling my voter registration. That can be found at bit.do/cancel voter, or you can just go to the Liberty Under Attack website and go to the LUA news tab. I'm in the process of gathering all of the laws and procedures for doing so in all 50 states, so that will be available soon. I've got about 20 or so far, so if you are interested, feel free to email me at shane@libertyunderattack.com, and I will gladly assist you in removing your consent from this bullshit rigged voting system. Lastly, this past week I put together an archive of documents, videos, and newscasts on profiling. Profiling is a major issue today, and anyone who speaks out against the government, and even those that don't, for example, statists, are targets of this profiling. If you take the time to look through the documents, the videos, the manuals, and the newscasts, you will see normal behavior being profiled as suspicious activity. The amount of documentation on that page is scary, but it needs to be addressed. So please help me in getting those out to the world. Download them, put them on flash drives, give them to your friends and family, whatever. That link is libertyunderattack.com/profiling.html. Again, libertyunderattack.com/profiling.html. So, tonight on Liberty Under Attack Radio, we're joined again by Kyle Rearden from the Last Bastille blog. We'll be discussing one of his articles titled, The Activist Legal Defense Fund Scam. I've been really anxious to do this broadcast for a couple of reasons. First off, it's a subject that needs to be discussed. We've all seen the legal defense fund requests all over the internet anytime a fellow dissident gets arrested. Second, there are some things that need to be addressed regarding the alternative media. And unfortunately, the topic we'll be discussing tonight is not the good side of the alternative media. So please bear with us and let us present the evidence and the documentation and our conclusions. And please, if you have something to add, or if you want to share your thoughts, feel free to call in. And if you're listening and viewing from fprnradio.com, make sure to pay attention to the chat. We'll be posting some links that you'll surely want to check out. So Kyle, I want to welcome you back again to Liberty Under Attack Radio. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty well, Shane. It's a pleasure to be on with you again.
Awesome. Well, we are definitely glad you're here. So Kyle, why don't, for the new listeners, or if they didn't catch our first broadcast or they haven't heard you on FPRN at a different time, why don't you introduce yourself, briefly plug your blog, and we'll go from there.
Well, Shane, I'm a blogger, and my work appears at the Last Bastille blog, which is located at The Last Bastille. Bastille is spelled Bastille, thelastbastille.wordpress.com. I write on a variety of political and economic issues mainly, and I was really pleased tonight that you wanted to talk about this particular topic.
Well, yeah, like I said, this is something that needs to be addressed. I think with a lot of hosts and a lot of, I guess, just journalists in general, it's not a subject they like to discuss. and it's not a subject that people like to hear discussed because I think it comes back to the same thing as if we ignore it, it'll go away, but it's not going to. So I think we should definitely address that tonight. So, go ahead.
Sure, and I'm glad that you really had the courage to broach this topic, because unfortunately there are a lot of rather vested interests who would rather push this under the carpet, as it were, shove it under the rug, and that's kind of what we're facing. And I think what we're really talking about here is when it comes to these activist legal defense funds. A trend I've noticed over the years is for various types of political dissidents, patriots, libertarians, freegans, and just other people whom the government doesn't like for whatever reason. They try to elicit sympathy from their own respective people by requesting them to support someone who is incarcerated that is alleged to be more or less persecuted by the government. So all sorts of noise gets made over the internet and other ways that cover the details about the purported injustice and so forth. And so at the end of the day, though, you kind of have to really ask the question, what's really being accomplished here? And I think it's important to cover at least briefly what legal defense funds are, at least this kind of activist version, which is supposed to be grassroots. The first thing to really understand is that it is really a type of crowdfunding. So if you understand crowdfunding, you can understand these activist legal defense funds, because they pretty much work the same way. Generally speaking, there's different forms of crowdfunding, but there's two models, and one in particular that's probably the most applicable here, which of course would be the donation model most prominently, and then secondarily sometimes the pre-order model as well. Crowdfundingplanning.com defines the donation model as, quote, people can donate money in small increments to a project which they believe has moral and ethical value that is good for the community. No return for money given, close quote. So that's the idea here with trying to help free someone who is a political prisoner, perhaps, is that's kind of the ethical cause here. And in terms of the history, the origins for these activist legal defense funds really are money bombs. I'm sure you've heard the term used over the past several years, Shane.
Yep, indeed. So, for the sake of time, I think that provides a pretty good introduction. I know most of our listeners have seen these going around on Facebook, so this isn't something that's kind of not very well known, so to speak. So.
Right. One thing I would like to mention, though, that is important to understand before moving forward, and again, just because, obviously for purposes of time, I really would encourage your listeners to get my article and perhaps even follow along with us as we go through it. And I believe the URL for that is tinyurl.com/legal defense fund scam. tinyurl.com/legal defense fund scam, and that'll redirect you to the page where you can also download a free PDF copy and perhaps follow along with us. One thing I would like to mention is the purpose of a legal defense fund is that the money is supposed to be allocated towards professionals who are going to help the alleged political prisoner. It's supposed to paying for usually a defense attorney or an investigative reporter or a private detective or a paralegal or some combination of all the above. So obviously, if that money is not going to those people who are supposed to be helping the political prisoner in question, then we have to really ask the very tough question, how are the funds being allocated exactly? So the one thing to keep in mind is that the chief goal of any legal defense fund is to hire a team of specialists who can increase the probability of either getting the defendant found innocent in court or otherwise forcing the government's charges to be dropped completely. So, for example, if the defendant continues to use his court-appointed public defender, then would it be unreasonable for us to assume that any donations to such a fund are not being allocated? And so the question going forward as we look at the different case studies I wrote about is that we also have to ask the question, is it really that strange under these circumstances to assume that many of these public requests for donations to such so-called legal defense funds are in reality just scams?
Yeah, Yeah, and I mean, especially from these 3 case studies, you can kind of see how it would put the entire crowdfunding or legal defense fund aspect into question altogether. Can we go ahead and get started on these case studies and start divulging this information?
I would love to.
Okay. All right. So we will start with a clip. This is a radio show that Luke Rudkowski was. I think was he a guest on, or was he? Did he call in, or what? I don't know exactly the circumstances.
I believe it was like Revolution Radio or whatever, or something to that effect. But yes, he was a guest.
Okay. So this first clip, you'll hear a couple people. We'll discuss what you heard afterwards. So, producer, or actually, Kyle, is there anything you want to add before we begin this clip?
Yes, just the individual in question. That the first case study is about Luke Rudkowski.
Okay. All right. So, producer, if you could please cue up clip 1.
Because it looked like another caller had joined us.
Another caller did, Bob. The caller is from 718. Caller, you called earlier, and go ahead and voice your opinion real quick.
Oh,
what
okay.
You had to say
That
earlier.
guy. All right, 718. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yes, Luke. Finally nice to speak to you again since I confronted you at ground zero. Are you ready to start giving up the financial reports of all that money you took?
Money I took, I ain't take no money, first of all, and this is Louis D.
We got the proof, Luke. We got some paperwork from your ex-girlfriend.
Listen, we're not going to waste.
We're
not going to get into a big debate here.
And then you want to keep people out for asking questions when you got a Freemason in the crew?
Caller, you're either gonna allow everybody to speak, or you're not going to be able to voice your opinion at all. Okay. So if you have something to say, go ahead. We'll give you about 30 seconds to voice it, and then we're going to let Luke respond.
Oh, no, the fact that he likes to kick people out for asking questions, like We Are Change Norwich, of course, other chapters got kicked out. People get deleted off his Facebook for asking about, what's up with the money, what's up with the transparency. Now we got the records. Now we got the records. Hold on, I'm not done. Now we got the records.
No, you got 30 seconds. Give him 30 seconds. I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer the financial thing, the Freemason thing, and supposedly me kicking people out. You want to do that?
All right, sounds great. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, you say I kicked, all these groups out because they ask questions, and I kicked you out because you asked questions. Louis B., I know who this is. I know the caller. I told you to step down as a leader of We Are Change Latino because you and Pat went after the Feel Good Foundation. You started writing Congressman Peter King, who was working with the Feel Good Foundation. You were saying that the Feel Good Foundation, a first responder organization, was stealing. You wrote letters to Peter King saying you were a part of We Are Change, and that We Are Change says that the Feel Good Foundation is stealing. Then I had John Field contact me and say, Luke, why is your group going to a congressman that I work with and say that I'm stealing money and embezzling money? And then when I kicked you out of that, I was like, look, you can't use the We Are Change name to try to break ties between a congressman and the Feel Good Foundation who are trying to pass the Droga bill. You can't do that. You said I could do what I want. I asked you to step down as a leader. You said you won't. So I said, fine. I can't have this in my organization, in my group, dividing and conquering first responders against us. So I said, you have to leave. And then as soon as you left, you started making up rumors about me stealing money. Then Sabrina Rivera gave Pat, your friend, the financials of We Are Change to prove that we were not stealing. She gave you those documents in her own words to show you. This is the financial report, Louis B. We Are Change is not stealing. Luke Rudkowski has not stole. The major evidence that you have, that you use all over Clockshot Radio about Luke Rudkowski stealing is this college payment. And let's talk about this college payment. I get financial aid. Sometimes this financial aid comes in late, which means I have to use my money on my account to pay for the college. And that's exactly what I did. Later, a check comes in that says financial aid. I cash that check and I use it for We Are Change money. So the whole thing of me using We Are Change money to pay for my college is utter nonsense and lies. I get financial aid that covers everything. No, because I got to describe this in detail because he's going to keep going on and on. This is finally the it. I usually don't like responding to these things because there's no reason. Like
No, but it's
people,
good. It's
right
it's
now
good to air
don't
it
need
out.
to be listening to me explaining myself against these stupid slanderous bullcrap. When we gave you the damn documents, we gave you the financial documents to prove we weren't stealing. And then you're going to go online and say we are stealing.
Okay.
And second of all, that We Are Change account was my own money account. I had my own money in there before. So that money that I was spending other stuff on was my money that I had there before the We Are Change even started. Now, that was a mistake. I should have never mixed in my money with We Are Change money. I had everything accounted for. Now it's in one We Are Change account and one my own personal bank account. I'm not a professional. Ever since I started the group, I've been asking people to help me do a nonprofit or do a corporation, do this and do that, and none of the group members helped me, even when Louis B was within the group. Now,
all right, Luke.
I don't know if we're going to continue going on with this, but there's the
it's all right. It's okay.
Yeah. Hey,
Luke,
let me let you know something, Luke. This is Ray Powell here. I run Revolution Broadcasting and have for quite.
Okay, so there you have it. So Kyle, why don't you kind of explain what we just heard Luke and Louis discussing?
Well, quite frankly, I think your listeners just heard it for themselves. I mean, Mr. Rudkowski just admitted to mixing the We Are Change money with his own personal money. So there's automatically a misallocation of funds right there. You know, I don't even need to really, how shall I say, really go into any more detail than that, at least on that particular detail. Now, there was that document. I have it available for free download, and I know a bunch of other people in the alternative media have commented on it. There was at least one vlogger, I think it was in Australia, who did a video on it and so forth. But it was a document by an organization whose initials are the COSCLC. And this came out in December of 2012. And if people want to download it, I know one copy is located at tinyurl.com/Rudkowski. Rudkowski is spelled Rudkowski. tinyurl.com/Rudkowski. And again, you know, the more that this document gets copied and put up on other websites for free download, that's kind of the idea here. Now, with
I do have that up on the screen share. This is the actual document, the COSCLC. It's a very 90-something page document.
It's 70. It's about 70 some odd pages, okay. And this you could call them a patriot group, if you will, but they did a fantastic job, and they were able to make public with assistance, of course, they were able to make public those records that you heard Mr. Rudkowski just mentioning, which basically shows quite a few things. First of all, there were... Well, let's look at some of the expense lines, right? I think there was the one about the Limerick House, I believe.
Yep, I do have that up on this. It will be up on the screen share momentarily, but I do have that part of that bank statement that was in the COSCLC document. So
yeah, I believe it's on page 11, right? So the amount was approximately $160.02 that was spent at the Limerick House, which I believe someone mentioned was a bar, I believe, somewhere in New York City. Not too familiar with the Big Apple. I'm a Southerner, but so I'll take their word for it, I guess. So I'm not quite sure why donations to We Are Change are being spent on alcohol, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it was a business meeting.
Possibly an expensive business meeting.
Yeah, you could say that again. So there's some other discrepancies here as well. I think something else that's important to mention is that there was approximately, if you look through all of this and if you add it up, it's approximately something on the order of like $60,000 that were more or less collected over that period of time. And I think more importantly was the fact that the cash withdrawals were made that nearly equaled those amounts. So, and then of course, once it's cash, you don't know where that goes. Now, remember too, I want to kind of remind everybody of something. When We Are Change was collecting money, they were doing it ostensibly for purpose. There was two reasons. One was that it was done for ostensibly for purposes of paying for their camera equipment because they were trying to do the alternative media function. They had that. But also they were trying to raise money for the medical expenses of 9/11 first responders. Now, what was interesting, what Mr. Rudkowski just said in that clip you played, was that he was alleging that other individuals in We Are Change were trying to sabotage the relationship We Are Change had with the Feel Good Foundation, which of course was the organization that was getting the money to the first responders and so forth. However, there is no evidence that the money even got to them in the first place. So, I mean, there very much does seem to be a bait and switch routine here. So I think the issue comes down to is it would almost seem that under false pretenses, the collected money from various individual donors are instead being allocated towards what I believe one other caller this was a different call, I think it was like the Piper Report or something, where he said, I don't want to be donating to somebody's personal kitty fund. And the link to that clip is within this document. So there's a lot of misallocation of resources, and this isn't exactly chump change either. I mean, $60,000 between 2007 and 2009 is nothing to sniff at.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of money, but I do want to make the distinction here because there are separate chapters outside of New York that have nothing to do with this whatsoever. So why don't we make that distinction as to who we are actually talking about? Because it's not actually the actual We Are Change. We're talking about what are we talking about, Kyle?
Well, I'm glad you point that out because this is rather interesting in the same document. Apparently, We Are Change, the one we're actually talking about tonight, is actually a for-profit corporation that is registered in the state of New York as of June 23rd of 2009. Their Department of State ID filing number is 3825451. So again, it's We Are Change Inc. As of 2009 was when they were incorporated. Their entity type was actually called a domestic business corporation specifically. So that's who we are referring to tonight. So just in case anybody was just kind of raising their eyebrows a little bit, we're talking about the corporation here. We're not talking about, for example, we are not talking about like WACNY, because actually that was interesting in this same document, this same case. They actually kicked out Luke Rudkowski. They actually separated themselves, and actually they themselves mentioned about We Are Change Inc., the business, the corporation. There is something else I want to bring up too, Shane. On page 19 of this document, there was actually the code of conduct for We Are Change. And it's rather interesting because it's under, I think it is like 7.3. So it's like 7 weekly meetings. It says 7 weekly meetings, and then below that there's a number of items. Here's what 7.3 says, quote, all finances will be presented to the group on a time basis determined by the group, either monthly, quarterly, biannually, etc., detailing expenses and money accrued, close quote. So that clip you heard a little bit ago with Louis B. calling in and asking, Luke Rudkowski for the records, actually it was Louis B. who's being consistent, who's following We Are Change's own code of conduct, not Luke Rudkowski. Where are the financials being presented? Louis B. was being consistent. Louis B. was asking for financial transparency as required by the We Are Change code of conduct. Luke Rudkowski, to my knowledge, has not, and definitely not according to this document anyway, has not been very transparent at all. In fact, there's other evidence here that people can look at their own leisure, which actually would suggest, especially the copious emails that are with pertinent sections highlighted, that would suggest that Luke Rudkowski was very much involved in a cover-up.
Okay, so there was one incident that you wrote about this in your article. There's a legal defense fund set up. I think it was him and one other person got arrested. I think the guy's name was Antonio Varias, I think is his name.
It was three individuals, Luke Rudkowski, Varias, and then one other one I still haven't identified.
Okay. So that is the actual legal defense fund. So why don't we discuss what happened with that?
Well, I guess the short version is that they were doing their alternative media function and trying to interview, I believe it was Mayor Bloomberg or some other politician. And basically there was a police encounter, and long story short, the three of them got arrested. And then naturally there was actually a Chip-In fundraiser. Chip-In is now defunct, but they were kind of one of their early crowdfunding websites. Now that online Chip-In fundraiser was able to be, let's see, the amount on that was $4,241.55 that was raised. Now, this is rather important because according to the case details provided by the New York State Unified Court System, Rudkowski retained the services of a group called the Legal Aid Society, specifically their New York County Criminal Defense Office, located on 49 Thomas Street in Manhattan. Their own mission statement, Shane, says that the society is a, quote, not-for-profit legal services organization, close quote. Okay, so we already have a problem. Why is Mr. Rudkowski getting basically the equivalent of a public defender, or a pro bono attorney, let's put it that way, if he's collected something on the order of over $4,000?
Isn't that interesting?
I think it's deeply disconcerting at bare minimum, sure.
So I do have this is from that COSCLC document, and this is an email from Antonis Varias. Quote: I was close friends with Luke Rudkowski from September 11th, 2008 until the summer of 2011. During this time, Luke had never held a paying job, though he was able to go out every weekend in New York City and spend well over $100 a night treating members of We Are Change. Anytime I raised any questions about the finances of We Are Change, I was quickly shut down. In the summer of 2011, Luke came to Europe and traveled extensively, still without a paying job. He informed me that We Are Change Ireland had paid for his flight into the EU, but the rest of his expenses are unaccounted for. In March 2009, I was arrested with Luke while attempting to question Mayor Bloomberg. Chip-In was set up, which $4,241.55 was raised. And the link is there. Charges were eventually dropped during a May 2009 court appearance. I was unable to appear in court this day, and when I asked Luke about the funds for my defense, I was given the runaround. Luke was someone I considered as a best friend for a lengthy period, and I initially refused to out him in such a way, but it is quite evident that he is involved in some illegal dealings concerning We Are Change funds. Without a doubt, I am convinced he is guilty of embezzling money, not only from the defense fund, but from 9/11 first responders, and a proper investigation will reveal this. And this is one of Luke's used to be best friends. So this is pretty telling.
Yes, it is. And, I think the last thing I heard about Rudkowski was that there was some sort of event somewhere in Mexico. I think it was, Acapulco or some sort of...
It was Anarchapulco or something.
Yeah, Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico, which, as far as I understand it, Shane, it's not a shanty town or anything. I could have sworn it was like a wealthier expat area, I believe, where he gave a workshop or two or five or whatnot. So... you couple, his traveling around with, outside of the country to do workshops for people. You couple that also with, I was checking the We Are Change Bitcoin wallet, because of course anyone with a Bitcoin who uses Bitcoins understands that through the blockchain you could look at anyone's Bitcoin wallet. And it's because that's how the protocol works. And I was checking it actually earlier, and apparently it's something on the order, at least as of Bitcoin's value today anyway, something on the order of about 20 some odd Bitcoins or thereabouts. In U.S. dollars, it's about $5,000, and it's pretty much, that's how much money went into it. But of course, the pattern being pretty typical, it seems to have been, it's mostly empty now.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. So do you want to mention there was an interview with Christopher Cantwell interviewed Jeff Berwick. You kind of touched on that a little bit, but could you give a little summary before we go to break? What Berwick, I guess the short dialogue between Berwick and Cantwell regarding Rudkowski? Sure. Chris Cantwell asked Jeff Berwick whether Luke Rudkowski was going to move to Mexico and expatriate. And Jeff Berwick said, well, he was here for Anarchapulco, the conference in Acapulco. And he gave a workshop and so forth. And then Berwick said something to the effect of, well,
Mr. Rudkowski is considering moving here, but who knows? Maybe Rudkowski was being polite. But what is factually true here is that Luke Rudkowski is traveling around, and Berwick even mentioned he was going to Miami at some point or had gone to Miami. So he gets around quite a bit, and that doesn't come cheap.
No, it certainly does not. But we're about to go to break. When we come back, we'll discuss a couple more case studies, and they're definitely going to be eyebrow raising. So stick around. Liberty Under Attack Radio will be right back.
Not a single thing that he could do could stop the shift of consciousness. Not even ominous plots to cause the apocalypse. Cause Earth cannot be caught by some crock of shit water moccasins. No matter what, you clowns will be stopped.